Yeah, my name is Hal Richins. I'm a family medicine physician. Yeah, this is a second career for me. I started my career out in the Air Force as a survival specialist and then decided I wanted something a little bit more professionally. So ended up being honorably discharged from the Air Force. I enrolled at the University of Arizona Tucson campus, and that's where I ended up getting my medical doctorate. And then did my family medicine residency in Colorado at the North Colorado Family Medicine Residency, and I specialized in rural medicine and developed a propensity for procedures doing surgical OB, tonsils, ear tubes, and colonoscopy. Uh, anyway, left residency and have worked at a few different spots, always tending to work in the rural side of medicine, and right now currently working at an FQHC. I think, truthfully, I had a really good experience with you guys. I was really candid with you guys about my feelings towards maybe moving to a new employer, and specifically going back to working at a critical access hospital. Up until this moment, I haven't had the best of experiences with my time there. I've always had really great patients. I've had a lot of professional growth, but always kind of struggled working with the administrators. And so you guys introduced me to the position up in Grangeville, and really were honest with what it entailed, listened to my concerns, my complaints, and gave me a chance to work through those concerns at my own pace. You answered my questions, I felt, truthfully, and introduced me to what I hope to be, the best employer that I've had up to this point. Really, I would say it was pretty. My experience with recruiters up to this point had been, they were there to tell me what jobs were open and make an introduction with a potential employer, and that was about it, honestly. The employers I had used up to this point, they were polite, they were nice. It just was really limited to an introduction. There was not really a lot of follow-up after that. I've even had recruiters call me after placing me with a different employer a year later to ask if I wanted to go somewhere else. So it really didn't seem like I was their interest, just getting me in a position that they had a billet for. So I would say, yeah, up until you guys, that was the extent of my experience, and really all I thought you guys were about. I just didn't know who you guys really worked for. So that's always a concern, right? Am I your most important client, or is it the employer? And whose interest you have in mind? And so that's always a concern. Again, not that I thought that any one employer was per se that they were lying to me. I just didn't know if they would really be open about the position, the employer, and what I would be walking into. So that was one of the issues. And two, I just, again, didn't think employers did more than just or recruiters didn't do much more than just make an introduction. So I really didn't have much of an expectation regarding having a companion through the process. You guys asked me a lot of questions. You guys got to know me. I think you were obviously wanted to make sure that you were going to present a good applicant to the employer, and vice versa. I felt like you shared a lot of information with me about the employer, and in the case of critical access medicine, since it's not just simply about the employer but also about the community, you also gave me a lot of information about the community as well. And so I felt like you guys constantly were available for information, lots of information that really benefited me, and showed me that you really were interested in both parties and making sure it was a good fit for both of us. I'd say great. I think you guys were always willing to communicate. You were always available to communicate. I probably communicate less than I probably need to at times, right? You work a full day, you're constantly dealing with patients. And sometimes I think I would prefer not to communicate, not because I didn't want to hear what you guys had to say, but because I was just in that mindset of I'm done. But then we would communicate. So an example would be when you wanted to kind of talk about questions or ideas that might help me during the job interview. My initial thought was, I don't really want to talk about that. I don't really feel like I need that or that it would really benefit me. But because I felt like what you had done up to this point was really, there was a lot of integrity and honesty in how you guys were approaching this position. I felt like I needed to do it. And afterwards, I was extremely grateful for that. So I feel like you guys are great at communicating. I didn't feel pressured by any means by our communications. So I thought that our communication was fantastic. I think it went well. I think I shared with you what my concerns were, questions I had, expectations I was hoping for, and I felt like you communicated that well with the CEO of Syringa. And so, which is important, right? It's kind of like buying a house. If you have a realtor who won't present your offers to the client, they're not really helpful. So I felt like you did that, and not in a way where you were maybe scornful or skeptical of what I was asking for, or thinking maybe it was too much or it was too embarrassing to go to the CEO with. So I felt like you guys did well in that regard. No, I think you guys were a great go-between. I think you, for a few reasons. One, obviously I could communicate well with you, and I didn't feel judged or threatened with those concerns that I brought to you. I felt like you were going to present those concerns fairly and appropriately to the employer. I didn't feel like you created an antagonistic relationship where you might go to the employer and be like, this guy's maybe not what you want. He's a little bit too aggressive, or maybe he's turning out to be a bad apple. So I don't feel like you did that at all for me. I also felt like when it was appropriate for me to talk with Abner or the CEO of Syringa, I felt like you facilitated that communication. And when I did communicate to him, I didn't feel like there was someone behind the curtain pulling the strings, right? I felt like when you stepped away and let us do what we needed to do. So I think you handled that relationship really well. I mean, there's 3 parties involved and all wanting something a little bit different. Obviously, you have a vested interest in your company and getting your contract accomplished. And Abner needed his job filled with the right person, and I had my wants, and I felt like you made it a very good relationship where we could all meet our needs and do so in a really professional and friendly manner too. I feel like I have a great relationship with you and with the CEO. So I really liked it. I thought you did fantastic. I really do. I think you guys were more advisor, I would say, right? I think you're right. You advised me as to what the position was. You advised me on interview strategies. You advised me on the location, the community, the position, the employer. You followed up after our interview. So I think all along the way, you were doing great as an advisor. I didn't really feel like you did much of any gophering. But if I did have a question, remember I had a question about the school and its calendar, and you found that for me right away, right? Even
I remember that.
I didn't have that file. I didn't have the email accessible to me that you had sent me with the link, and so I tried to find it on my own last week, and I couldn't even find it. I had to go back to that email that you had sent me. And so, yeah, I feel like you definitely helped with stuff, but the role that you mainly played was as advisor. It was efficient, and it was a good tempo, because to give you an example, I had tried this process a couple of years ago with a critical access hospital, and they had wanted the process to take 6 months. They had come out and said that, with the intent being that they felt like that amount of time would give them sufficient, it would give them a sufficient amount of time to investigate every aspect of me, them, the relationship. And it was too long. It was so long. And I needed something to be quick. I needed to find a spot, find an employer, and find out really quickly if this was even worth pursuing. And it went really quick. I think, and you might remember better than me, but I think from the time you and I had a discussion, within 3 weeks, I think I was up there with an interview with my family, no less. So it was quick.
From the time of presentation,
the
time that you accepted the offer was 29 calendar days.
Yeah. So about a month. So that was, it went really well. And it didn't feel pressured. I didn't feel pressured at all. In fact, I thought maybe I was pressuring you guys, because I was like, I got to get up here. This is the date that I need to be there. And
sure.
And you guys made it work. And so I felt like it went really well as far as the amount of time it took to get to where we are today. I think everything that, so obviously with the compensation, I had asked for a little bit more. I'd gotten a little bit more. Some I didn't get, and that was okay. Again, I felt like it was a really amenable discussion where we all got a little bit of what we wanted. So I feel like, and again, you gave me the opportunity of either talking directly to the CEO or working through you to do that. And I felt like the outcome was good in that regard. So compensation worked really well. As far as work-life balance, I felt like it was what it was. I don't feel like really that was an issue. The job and what it entailed was really clear cut. I knew walking into it what the expectations were. There wasn't really a lot of wiggle room as far as I was going to get additional days off or less time in the ER or something to that extent. But to that, in that regard, I knew what the job was, and so I'm thankful for that. And it was an acceptable schedule for what I was looking for regarding my work-life balance. So compensation, work-life balance, that went really well. And those were two of the biggest things, issues I had. The other concern was just making sure that I had a really good working relationship with the peers that I would have there. And so I was able to talk with multiple doctors that worked in that facility, both at a face-to-face interview and over the phone. And so facilitating that, making that happen was really helpful, because a few of the other places I worked, I felt like the physicians really didn't have a great working relationship. And so being able to talk to them about that and find out it was a good relationship was helpful too. So those were probably the three things that were most important to me that I felt helped with.
How has or how will this opportunity?
I think significantly. The goal would be that this is probably the last place that I want to work, at least as long as my family and I live together. So I think it'll have a long impact. The goal when we came to the decision to move to Grangeville and to work with Syringa was that it might be the last place I worked before retirement, that it would be a place where my family and I could live and homestead, and where I could feel professionally accomplished. So I would say it's going to make a huge impact, or lasting impact. That's the intent, because it's going to extend from now until the duration of my career. I think that you guys are a comprehensive recruiter, in the sense that you don't just introduce positions to an applicant. You do that initially, obviously, this is what we have available, but you go beyond that. And again, there might be other recruiters that do that, but I didn't know that they did do that. And so I would say, for someone that maybe was hesitant about finding the right place, maybe they had a couple bad experiences before, or maybe they just never felt like a recruiter was honest, I think my intent in the conversation would be to inform them that, hey, these guys will do a lot more than just simply introduce you. to what's out there, they will walk you through that process. They will be an advocate for you. And that's a really big deal, right? Because as a recruiter, I'm not paying you, right? It's
That's true.
the employer is. And so that inherently makes it seem like, well, you're not in it for me, but that's not the impression that I got at any step of the way. And I don't feel like it was because you duped me into believing that. It's because I really did sincerely believe that you guys were advocating for me. And so I think if I had a peer that was looking for a new position, that is what I would let them know. And you guys even said, if this isn't the right fit, it's not the right fit, and we have plenty of other opportunities. But you didn't come to me with 6 or 7 different opportunities. I told you what I was looking for, and you found me this spot. I said I wanted to be in Idaho. You didn't say, well, how about Missouri, right? You didn't do that, even though maybe those opportunities were available if this didn't pan out. You guys heard what I had to say. You weren't like the shoe salesman where I come in and I say I'm a size 9 and they come back and say, here's a size 10. No,
Sure.
It doesn't work that way, right? I'm one size. Find the size that
Wear
fits.
some bigger socks.
Yeah, you guys found the size. You found what fit for me, and it didn't seem like you were off put by it, right? I mean, that's a pretty tall order to say, hi, I'm a full spectrum family physician that wants to do these procedures in this setting, a small town, and I want to have this experience in this location. And I mean, it was a pretty stringent search criteria, or the criteria was pretty stringent that I put out there. And I felt like you guys took it with stride and didn't try to put me someplace else. You first tried to fit what I needed, and then I knew there were options elsewhere if it didn't work out. Yeah, I think really it was a matter of you guys listening to what my concerns were, and then trying to figure out what that concern was and how we get through it. Because ultimately, it's not being a rural physician that I dislike. My family doesn't have a problem living in a small town or being an hour from a Walmart or an hour and a half from a Costco. That's not the issue. The issue's always been wherever I've gone, the environment really, the organization hasn't been healthy. I mean, the first 3 employers that I worked for all had CEOs and other high-level administrators that were fired from the organization, boards that were fighting with each other, and communities that were fighting with boards. And I think, I assume hearing that you thought, well, okay, here's an organization that the issue is the leadership, not what I did as a physician. And then you told me a little bit about Abner and his organization. He'd been there for a while. He'd even come from one of the organizations I had left and had some of the same concerns. And saying that and looking back, one of the things that you guys did, and I don't know if this is something you want to hear, but when I had shared with you some of the issues I had and with some of the organizations, you kind of validated that in a professional way, right? I said, well, this is some of the issues. And I remember specifically when I talked about one of those near Grangeville, you had said, actually, I still haven't heard a lot of good things about it. And at that point, we had developed this relationship of trust where I felt like you were being sincere. You weren't just feeding my anger, my frustration. But on the flip side, you weren't staying so far aloof from it. I felt like, you couldn't relate to me. In medicine, I feel like in medicine, a lot of times physicians, we put on this mask, right? Where we want to pretend everything is great and everything is good. If someone does something bad, we always start the conversation by, well, they're a good person. And then trying to minimize something bad that might have happened. And sometimes that seems a little disingenuous and disheartening when you feel like, okay, maybe I'm the bad guy, or maybe it's always my fault. Maybe I'm just the rain cloud. And so having you say, no, I've heard these things, and you sharing some of those things, and they were exactly what I had experienced, I felt like, okay, I'm not crazy. So that helped too. When you said, hey, this organization is different, I knew you understood what I was saying, and it allowed me to trust your recommendation at that point. But had you not done that and just simply said, well, this is a different organization, I would have probably internally said, you don't even know what I'm talking about. How can you tell me that this is different? But you knew who I was talking about, and you knew some of the experiences I'd gone through. So I felt like I could trust what you had to say. And so that was really important. You didn't just kind of let it go to the side. You didn't try to pretend that it wasn't a big deal. So that was really, really important to me. And I even shared that with my wife after the fact. And I said, they actually said that they had seen some of these bad things, whereas other people are like, I don't want to get into that mix. Everything's rosy, nothing's bad. And it's really just hard to relate to someone that has that mentality.
Sure.
And you did it. And again, this is really important because I don't want anyone to think that you guys are negative or that you say anything disparaging about anyone. You didn't in any way. You just listened, shared some insightful thoughts that were appropriate for that situation, and that was amazing. So yeah, you did it. It was just professional. It wasn't a, oh yeah, those guys are awful. Here, listen to what my experience was. No, you
Right.
just said, I've heard that, or I've met that person, and I know these things, and that was really important to me. And so I think the whole process was great. It was transparent, and it was refreshing because I feel like in medicine, you don't get that much. I had one attending. He said to me, he said, there's not a single question a medical student or physician ever asks that he doesn't know the answer to, meaning no one wants to look dumb, right? So we always want to pretend we don't know something, but we're only going to pretend as much as we really know what's going on. We just don't. So we never really want to be vulnerable. We never really want to be open to something raw and uncomfortable. And so when I come across situations where it does feel like this is sincere and a little bit raw, it's like, oh, finally, this is great. It's good to talk to real people. Yeah, I would, one thing I'd tell you is, again, I didn't know you guys existed. It was only happenstance that I came across you guys. And
Yeah.
again, I might be more of an anomaly, but I didn't know what you guys do or what can be done as a recruiter. And so I don't know how you guys get your name out there, and I don't mind sharing my experience with anyone that would ever ask me. But that's one thing that I wish I had known long ago, that was an opportunity, that there was an experience
Sure.
for that. So other than that, not really. I think we've covered it all. My experience has been really positive. Again, the only time I ever was like, I really don't want to talk to you guys, was when we did that little interview thing. And that was
The interview prep, right?
prep, yeah. And that was
Yeah.
really just born out of arrogance, right? Not because you guys had pressured me or made me feel inadequate. You guys didn't do that in any way, right? It was just me. And after having had that experience, it was a really good experience. It was the right amount of time and the right amount of information. And that was the only time in the entire process where I remember thinking, oh gosh, this is really intense. And then we did it, and I was like, that was really good information. But when you're arrogant, you just don't like to be told that you don't know what's going on, that
Sure.
you could be better. And
Yeah.
so, but you guys did it you did it in a really good way, you really, really did. And so I think overall the whole experience, you circled back, checked with me on a couple occasions how things are going. And so, yeah, and even you were so apologetic when we had that mix up on the contract, and I kind of chuckled because, I don't know if physicians ever open up about it, but I mean, we mess up all the time, right? We put the wrong message in our note. We forget to send a medication to the pharmacy to be filled. We forget to write an order for a test. And so I'm always interested when people make a little mistake, because it makes me feel less bad about myself. It's like, sweet,
Sure.
I've got a brother that struggles too sometimes. And so it never hurts my feelings if something small falls through the crack, which I felt like that was really a small thing. It didn't bother me at all. But you were so apologetic, and I appreciated your honesty in saying I messed up. And again, those all just work to building a strong relationship with. It worked to building a relationship with me. So
Wow.
I think your business is great. I hope it's super successful for you, man. I
Wow.
really
Thank
do. I
you.
think you did a great job.